Okay, and just so everybody knows, this webinar will be recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded for any reason, now is the time. So welcome everybody to the webinar. It is the top of the hour, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we're excited to dive into a topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts: how to keep a cold call going past those initial 10 seconds, mastering that first 10 seconds and everything that goes into that. My name's David Dulany with Tenbound here in San Francisco, and I'm joined by Joe Cronin, leader over at Connect Leader. Joe, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, David, and it's good to be here. Definitely one of my favorite things to talk about is cold calls. So love to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to everybody from Connect Leader for putting this together, especially Mary, who's also on the line. This is going to be a lot of fun. So we're talking today how to keep a cold call going past 10 seconds and mastering that critical step. And Joe, we initially started talking about this when we were talking about agent-assisted dialing and just one of the functions that Connect Leader helps sales teams with. Can you tell us a little bit about Connect Leader and some of the different aspects that beyond agent-assisted dialing, what does Connect Leader do to help these sales reps?
Yeah, so we are a full platform, but it's essentially helping sales reps get into a lot more conversations via email cadences, with dialing stacks beyond just agent-assisted dialing, because we believe that it's not always about going fast. Sometimes you have to go slow with your dialing for sure, but we wrap it all together with some data intelligence and are able to get the rep to the right call, where they should be able to have the best chance to succeed. And the agent-assisted dialing piece, if people don't know what that means, it's essentially all the hard work of dialing by name, talking to gatekeepers that can suck up an hour of your life, and you only have the ability to talk to one prospect an hour. With our stuff, you talk to 6 to 10 prospects in an hour because of that agent-assisted dialing. But again, we believe it needs to be part of the entire platform, the other dialing plus the email cadences to really make it work well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, when we were talking about the topic today, what's interesting about working with Connect Leader and agent assistant dialing and all the power that it brings is that, we work so hard to get people on the line, for forging those conversations. And there's such a lot of work involved as far as finding the data and organizing everything. And then in that golden moment that you actually get somebody on the line, how can you, extend that conversation into something meaningful and not have them just immediately hang up on you?
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a golden moment, right? Because particularly with manual dialing, that you work so hard to get to that golden moment, and then you can blow it in the first 10 seconds. The first 10 seconds shouldn't actually be that hard for you. The harder part can actually come later in the call. But if you blow it in the first 10 seconds, you can, ruin a day of calling just because you didn't get the attention the way that you should have.
Right. And everybody on the call, they're working hard. They're working themselves to the bone out there to try to have these initial conversations. So, let's dive in and give them some tools and strategies to be able to forge those. And so we always start, Joe, with going through some of the mindset and the attitude to actually, prepare for these calls and
Yeah.
go through, what we need to do on the upfront. And then let's go into the actual, do's and don'ts of when we actually get folks on the line. And so what we prepared here is first and foremost, and anybody on the call that does this for a living knows, we've got to have the right list, and we've got to have the ideal customer profile from the account level the right people and their pain points, and then the right data.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And because you can be doing this all day long. And you know what? There's too many SDRs out there that are stuck with bad data that their management gave them, or bad lists that they are set up to fail because they're not calling into the right companies, they're not calling into the right personas, and they don't have the right data that's actually going to get to that person. So if you don't get this part right, forget about that first 10 seconds, because you need to get this part right as much as possible. You're never going to get it perfect, but you're going to need to get it as right as possible.
100%. And if someone's sitting out there and they're like, you know, my data is a mess, you know, I don't know who my ideal account is, or, you know, the people that I'm supposed to be calling, you know, where do we even start with that as an individual rep?
Yeah, as an individual rep, you need to kind of sound the alarm and let your management know that you really don't have the right tools to do your job effectively. You're going to get so many more meetings when you start to talk to the right people where your message actually resonates. And then your management has to look at folks like ZoomInfo and other data providers to be able to get you calling in to the right prospects. But you know, job one is to get this piece of it right. Otherwise, you know, David and I could tell you every trick in the book, but the call's not going to end up in good meetings if you're not calling into the right people.
100%. So do as much as you can as an individual, but then you got to sound the alarm. I like the way that you put that, because if we don't have good data, then we're just completely spinning our wheels. It's so foundational.
Yeah, and too often it's, you know, blamed on the SDR or the account rep that why are you not making better use of your calling time? They never had a real shot. So it is up to management to give them the best possible shot.
Got it. Okay. And so let's assume that we've got some decent data. We're starting to hit people. What do we need to understand as far as the humanity of the person that's actually picking up the phone?
Yeah, you need to always be putting yourself in the shoes of your prospect and kind of visualize what's going on in their world when you called. The last thing they want to do is talk to a sales rep. They picked up the phone because they thought it was a personal call, or they thought it was a business call that they better pick up right away rather than just letting it go to voicemail. But then when they figure out that, oh, this is a sales call, you need to imagine that, you know, they're like this with the phone that far away because they're not listening, they're not caring, and you need to kind of reel them in and engage them. And they're just looking for every reason to get you off the phone because, again, you're not what they signed up for. So you need to kind of get into the mode of thinking like, okay, if I were the prospect, how would I want to be dealing with this? What do I need to hear to kind of continue the conversation?
100%. Got it. And so that's pretty negative, man. I mean, like, so we're basically saying like, we have to walk into this under the impression that they mistakenly picked up the phone. They don't necessarily want to talk to us and they want to get off the phone ASAP. And so it's like, first of all, we've got to have that in our head that that's what they're thinking. And so then we got to change up our whole approach based on that, right?
That's right. It's, I guess, negative, but it's also super realistic. And once you start thinking like that, you can figure out how you would, if you were the prospect, what would make you want to keep talking to this sales rep. So I think we're at the mindset matters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so okay. So once we realize that, okay, and we're trying to put ourselves into the shoes of that prospect, how do you adjust your mindset so that it really can help you to stay positive?
Yeah, I mean, first you have to remember that if you're doing this right and you are talking to the right ICP, you're talking to the right persona, and you have something that will help them, you're actually doing them a huge favor, and they will actually want to talk to you and talk to your company. You have to remind yourself of how many people you've helped, how many people you've scheduled meetings with, that actually thanked you and were really glad you called, because now they're aware of your stuff, right? That they didn't know that they could get the help, and now you can help them. So it's that piece of it. And also in the mindset, just remind yourself that your company is relying on you, right? So many companies rely on the outbound sales engine to drive new business, to find new opportunities. And it's that important. You got to make sure that you're just 1,000% committed every time you get that live person on the phone, to actually be super professional, get to the point, and actually get to that next step, which would probably usually be a meeting.
Got it. And, you know, I think where people hit a wall on the mindset is they realize that, you know, they're calling out, people might not be waiting for them to call. And so they don't want to bother people, right? So how do you shift your mindset from, I don't want to be a bother, to, you know, using some of these, I want to be confident, I'm doing something that's critical for my company's very survival, really. And I want to be confident in that.
Yeah, and I think you need to go to the first one there, is have that mindset that you're doing this person a huge favor. And, you know, David, you're a decision maker that gets calls, I am. And when I hear someone who's not committed and kind of almost they're waiting for an excuse to get off the phone with me, I'm happy to get off the phone with them. When I hear someone who's committed and really into it, I kind of want to go continue on the conversation. So that's, you know, what reps need to do, is get that level of commitment that I am potentially finding the next person that can really get a huge value out of what my company sells.
So it's getting that commitment from yourself first before you pick up the phone.
Totally. If you don't have the commitment, don't bother picking up the phone.
Right. And then point 6 here is why are you doing the outreach? The outreach is the exploration. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So again, maybe slightly on the negative side, but the reality of cold calling has always been, it's somewhat exploration. You're going to find a lot of folks who maybe won't get the value or aren't in the market, whatever, but you are doing exploration. You're finding those ones that almost magically have been sitting there waiting for you to call. They are in market. They do have the problem that you have to expect. You're going to get a lot of no's, but you're going to get, you are going to find those prospects that really actually want to engage with you.
I love it. Okay. So you got to keep going. So how do you get psyched up? I love this. Some tips on, if you got that good data, you're in the right mindset, it's time to sit down and start making some calls. You want to get psyched up.
Yeah. And this might be a little woo woo or whatever, but again, I mean, every call is a performance, whether you like it or not, it's a performance. And every performer is doing this kind of thing to get into the right mental place so that their audience will really, that what they are doing will be as receptive as possible to that audience. So yeah, stand up, go for a walk, do some push-ups. I mean, those things are easy in the world of agent-assisted dialing, because you can do that, and then an hour later you had 6 to 10 conversations, so it was worth it. In the world of manual dialing, you're doing it all day long, so you know you can't go for that many walks maybe, but in our world it makes sense to do that really active stuff. But always, you know, take that moment when the phone is ringing to just be thoughtful about what you want to do next. Don't be looking at your phone or an app or something like that. Kind of be a little bit, you know, in the be meditating a bit in terms of where you want to go with this call. And the big thing is be grateful that it's a tough job, but it's a good job that can make a really big difference for your company.
Definitely. People don't realize how important it is to get out there and talk to them. And it's sort of like, bring yourself into the moment. Like whatever happens, you have that confidence. And then when you're actually on there, you know, it's being positive and upbeat and not making it sound like this is like the 17th, you know, cold call that I've made in the last hour, right?
That's right. Yeah. And to, you know, start by being humble, right? But at the same time, just 1,000% own what you are doing. If you don't, that prospect will kind of smell blood in the water and know that you're kind of weak. You're not really, you don't have the conviction that you should. And so, be humble, but at the same time, have the conviction, be really firm that this makes sense, that you are on purpose calling this person at this company, you think you can help, and have that confidence while also showing respect to that prospect. But, the key thing in terms of a big do is be as relevant as possible on that call. Don't be, don't go to the extent of doing 15 minutes of research pre-call every call, because with the, that it will take you maybe 30 to 40 dials to get someone on the phone. That's a huge waste of time to do that kind of pre-call research. But at the same time, once you have David Dulany on the phone, figure out, looking at the website and otherwise, how you're able to make yourself as relevant as possible. But, as we've been talking about, be positive, be upbeat. But the big one is get to the point. Prospects actually appreciate it. Then you can just get to what the purpose is and let them know, how you can help and what you really want to do with this call. Otherwise, they assume the opposite, right? There've been too many sales reps over the years. I used to work with one that he'd put his feet up on the desk at the beginning of a call, and you're like, I know this is going to be a 20-minute call, right? That this poor guy on the other side of the line who's got 50 other things to do is now in this really long call that they didn't want to be in, and they're just trying to get the person off the phone. So get to the point and get to that next step of a meeting, a demo, a discovery call, whatever it is.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And then, so how do you kind of warm them up a little bit, so that when they call, they might actually have heard your voice or know you beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, because we were talking about the first 10 seconds of the call in this webinar, but so much of it really goes to what happened before that first 10 seconds. And so, anyone in 2020 who is doing outbound prospecting and doesn't have their prospects in some sort of cadence, that they're first doing some emailing, they're doing some social touching, they're not doing it right, because you're going to get so much better results out of your outbound calling because of your emailing, because of your social touches. You might get a couple, replies to an email that you set a meeting, or you might get a social touch that you set a meeting, but it's as important how much you're warming them up. What happens on the other side, now that you have your 10 seconds, I think, David, you called it the golden moment, is that prospect now knows that, hey, Joe's put in his time with me. He really must think that there's a fit here. It's not some sort of random call.
Got it. Okay. So, and then with your team and what you've seen, is leaving voicemails a good idea? Because I've got some feelings on it. I get a lot of calls, and hardly nobody leaves voicemails anymore. What are your thoughts on leaving that voicemail?
Yeah, for us, our technology can go too fast sometimes for voicemail in terms of it's something that we offer, but sometimes I worry about it for my team in terms of we don't want to oversaturate with voicemails. But at the same time, as part of a cadence in an early step, leaving a voicemail, absolutely, because again, you're creating that brand, and that person now is thinking, David put his time in with me.
Got it. Okay, so leave a voicemail. Get those first touches out. And by the way, everybody who's on the line, we will be taking questions. Some questions are coming in, and we'll have a Q&A session. So hold tight for that, and we'll be sure to get to those. So practicing for the actual call itself. So there's various schools of thought on scripts and how to use scripts. What are your thoughts on preparing for this golden moment?
Yeah, so there's a part of me that hates the idea of a script for anything in real life, right? But the reality is, for calling, you need to have a script to some extent, and you need to start with the words on the page that you are reading and get to a point where you've memorized it, but really get to a point where someone could wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you would know your script cold, right? That It's just that kind of rote, because what you don't want to be doing, and this is the last bullet here, is kind of figuring out, oh, I get David on the phone, maybe I'll talk about this and this, and you're figuring that out in your mind. At the same time, the words are falling out of your mouth, and they don't always fall out as elegantly as you'd like, right? But if you, in that first 10, 15 seconds, are really clear and to the point, that will be received by the prospect. They will see you are a pro, and things will go well. So yeah, you need to know that first kind of opening statement, just super cold. Don't kind of figure it out on the fly for every call.
Got it. So it's almost like you're memorizing that first part to the point where you could say it cold, but then you can bring in your own style, as you become more familiar with those first 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, and really, I would suggest the first 10 seconds, you can have rote almost all the time, right? And it's the follow on where maybe you do want to get more accustomed to who you're dealing with on the phone. But it gives your mind, when you do something over and over again, now you can say it, and your brain can actually be working on what you want to say next as the words are coming out of your mouth, because you're so comfortable saying those words.
Got it. Okay. So you're ready to go. You sound confident. You've got everything. Now you got to, actually pick up the phone and start dialing. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, we are in the business at Connect Leader of giving reps more at bats, right? And so to be able to get good at your first 10 seconds, you need to do it a lot. I mean, we talk to so many sales leaders that it's sinful. I mean, reps will do a day of calling and have 3 to 5 conversations. It's crazy. And they're college educated reps, right? And they're doing 3 to 5 2-minute conversations in a day. In our world, we give those at bats, right? So 6 to 10 in an hour. And you pretty quickly start to see patterns of what's going well, what's not going well, right? But from a rep, again, to be able to get this cold is do it a lot. I mean, I don't care if you're saying it to your girlfriend or your mom, keep saying it so that you're so comfortable with those first 10 seconds. And when you whiff, right, and you will, right, all of us making calls, all kinds of stuff comes out of our mouth that we go, oh, geez, I blew that one, right? Own it and figure out, what you could have done better. Was it that you were multitasking before the call? Was it that you just were not in a good mental state before the call? Whatever it is, figure out what you did wrong, because sometimes it is what you did wrong. It's not about the prospect. It's about what you did.
100%. My old mentor when I first started in sales was when in doubt, pick up the phone. Like that, and that always stuck in my head, because it's like, it's easy to become overwhelmed and worried about your quota and all that stuff. And he's just like, it cuts through everything. When in doubt about anything, just pick up the phone. Just go talk to somebody. Right. And it still works. So you got to get those at bats. Definitely.
That's right.
So what about pre-call research though? Because if you're trying to bust out like 100 calls in an hour, do you have time to go and take a quick look at their website and get some planning done, or do you just bust through the calls?
Yeah, with our fastest dialer, you don't have time really. What you do have the ability to do is have your CRM, like Salesforce, feed Connect Leader with some bullet points of what you want to talk to this particular prospect about, right? So you can do that research so that you're ready when the call flies up there. But I'm a big believer in, you can go into most of these calls pretty cold. If you're actually solving the problem that exists with this particular prospect, it will resonate, and you can start to make it a little bit more personalized during the call. One of the, a little pro tip for folks that I think not enough people do this is, if you can go to the Chrome tab or any browser tab for most companies, or a lot of companies anyway, like everyone's familiar with Chorus. You see there, it says, if you just hover over the tab, it says Conversation Intelligence for Sales Teams, right? So in 1 second, you kind of know, oh, okay, that's what Chorus does. You can do that with a lot of your prospects. That's what they're trying to get found for as far as SEO goes. a lot of websites, you need 10 minutes to look at to figure out what the heck they do, right? That's a kind of way that you can get right to, okay, this is the business this particular prospect is in.
Got it. Okay, that's super helpful. And then it sounds like it takes it all the way back to the first thing that we were talking about with the data and making sure that you're actually calling the right people that generally have the problem that you solve. Because if you're in that neighborhood, you're calling the right people, then once you have your script down and you got your confidence up, as long as you can get through those first 10 seconds of resistance, then you can customize the conversation as much as you want, but you got to get through that first one, and you got to have the right people.
Definitely, because that's what makes these calls work when you actually are you and you're able to be a real sales rep, right? Yeah.
100%. Okay, so inevitably someone's gonna, what do we say, you know, when it's like, oh, is this a sales call? I just walked into a meeting, like those initial, you know, gut reactions on the first 10 seconds. Like, what do you say to that?
First of all, expect it, right? I mean, you are going to get them. So absolutely expect it. Be ready for it. You say what you want to say, but you know, if you want to, is this a sales call? Yes, it's a sales call. Even better, it's a quick sales call. Here's what I want to talk to you about. You know, something like that. Whatever it is that you're not caught off guard. Once you're caught off guard, the prospect is now more likely to be getting off the phone with you.
Got it. So you could literally like go in with your buddy in a conference room and practice those 5 or 6, you know, initial rejections or whatever you call it, like initial objections. You could practice that over and over again to the point where you're brushing off a brush off.
Yeah, to the point where you actually look forward to it because you know you can handle it so well, right?
Man, okay, so everybody, after listening to this, you got to rewire your brain to enjoy, you know, objections and things like that. It sounds like what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And then, how do you get better at this? I mean, one thing that we talked about was actually recording your calls, and I know that, you know, in some instances, if you're just going outbound, you can't record them. But if you can record them, what's the value of that?
Yeah, if you can, and you know, there's states that it's trickier, but there's a lot of cases you can record your outbound call, and the value is, you know, most reps will listen to their call and can ask these questions. Would I want to talk to that rep? And they go, you know what? I wouldn't want to talk to that rep either. They didn't have the heart, the conviction. They weren't really invested. They just, you know, I wanted to get off the phone. I had given up on this prospect for whatever reason. So it's doing that gut check of, would you really want to talk to this rep, and using it to up your game to say, I want to be better than how I heard myself on the recording, because we all have opportunity to improve, right?
Got it. Yeah, and I got a note here in the comments. Thanks, Colleen. She just mentioned they actually record the calls, play them back, and then they use that to refine the script as well, that they then will learn. So it's kind of almost like a coaching thing, like what Chorus does, for example.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's such a good point, because if you listen to yourself and you're like, would I want to talk to that person that called? You know, that's a gut check moment right there, because if you sound like you're going too fast, or you're not confident, or you're not making any sense, then you got to change up your approach fast. Yeah,
and one quick thing on the going too fast, which we see here, don't go too fast, the second bullet, is old advice, reference that a lot of people don't know anymore. Johnny Carson, who was the Tonight Show host for many years, used to tell stand-up comedians that, all right, when you're out there for the first time doing your stand-up act, go slow. And if you think you're going too slow, go slower. That's kind of how you need to think about this. When you're racing through it, that telegraphs to the prospect that this person also can't wait to get off the phone and doesn't think it's important enough to say this in a deliberate kind of way. So don't go too fast. Don't be apologetic. Again, ultimately you're finding people who can really get a lot of value from what your company sells. And the third bullet may be a little rough, but don't be incompetent. If you are listening to your calls and you hear that, gosh, you just don't sound competent, then you should expect that prospects will not want to continue the conversation with you. It's one of the things on their mental checklist that they go, this person's an amateur, so I'm just going to get them off the phone as quickly as possible. And don't be desperate. Let them know that you're here to help.
Yeah, I mean, you're really painting a picture here, because it's like, you can visualize somebody who's kind of talking real fast and very apologetic, and, they come across as desperate, and you get that gut visceral reaction of like not wanting to spend any time there, versus the opposite vision is like someone who's confident, they're holding themselves confidently, they're competent. They've got confidence behind what they're talking about, and you feel much more comfortable with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay. So and then to the competence point, you mentioned that there's certain vocabulary that you should know in the world of the people that you're talking about. So what do we need to know to be sure that we're saying the right things?
Yeah, so we're getting closer to, building that opener, right? Building that first 10 seconds. And that first 10 seconds can be so many things for so many different companies or even reps that might work. But one of the things that I recommend, if you can get to the point where you can use some language that is going to be relevant to that particular prospect that you're talking to, what that does is it makes them say, okay, this is not a completely random call. This person's actually calling in knowing who I am, what I do, and this is relevant to me. Without doing that, they're assuming the opposite. They're assuming you're just calling everyone and that you might be getting lucky, kind of thing. The more you can inform them that, no, this is very much on purpose. Cloud migration, blah, blah, blah. Oh, geez, that's what we do. That's part of my job. All of a sudden, how much more receptive am I going to be to that call? Obviously, much more receptive.
Got it. This is a really interesting point, because probably your average CMO, for example, they're sitting there in their office, they're in all this pressure, or at home now, but they're under all this pressure from the board and their boss, and they probably feel pretty isolated, and they want to know what other CMOs are doing, and they want to feel like some sort of connection to other, high-level professionals like that. So, saying like we help your peers, I think is a very powerful, buzzword for this.
Yeah, you talk to, as a rep, as an SDR, you talk to more CMOs, more CISOs, more whatever it is than they do. So you have some expertise that they actually want to try to grab from you if you can start to have a good conversation.
That's very powerful. That breaks them away, like you said, from, oh, this is just another cold call. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of this. Like, this is why people tuned in. What do we actually say, building on all the foundation that we have? So how do we structure that first 10 seconds?
Yeah, so, starting with, and we're not going to give you the exact words that you need to say. We're going to give you ideas to think about in terms of how you should build your own first 10 seconds, right? One of the things I recommend is that you do want to use that prospect's first name as quickly as possible, again, to show them that this call is not random. And even you want to use that company name, because again, okay, Joe Cronin is trying to get me, Bob, at ABC Company. This is not a random call. That's part of what I suggest you should be doing whenever possible.
Got it. Okay, so we sit down. We're always going to have the person's name. We're using their first name because you could murder their last name, right?
Yeah.
First name.
Yeah, and you don't want to go too formal either, right?
Right. Okay. Got it. And then I think we can help you. And then how do we build the next this is the critical moment where they're either going to tune out,
Yeah.
hang up, say something rude. What do we have to say?
Yes, and you can see how exciting and dynamic this opener is, right? Not really. It's not. It's really, the truth is, if you go back to all the other slides and you get that part right, and you have the confidence and you have the conviction, the words you say next are going to matter so much less than the words you say. So with this, right? Hey, Bob, it's Joe Cronin from Connect Leader. I know you're crazy busy, but I think we can help XYZ Co. Can you give me less than 30 seconds to explain? That, again, is not so insanely exciting. I've heard that sort of thing work so often it would blow your mind in terms of it doesn't even give Bob a clue as to what's going on here. Most people do want to give that person that extra time if there's the courtesy of understanding that Bob is super busy and that I'm actually giving you the ability to continue this call or not. We find the majority of folks will just let you go ahead at that point. If you don't, what my CEO affectionately says, if you don't stumble and mumble throughout it, right? If you stumble and mumble throughout that, they're not going to let you pass that first 10 seconds.
Got it. So this is where it comes in with the scripting and the practice and the getting it down to the point where you've got that confidence. Because if you stumble and mumble at this point, you're toast. Is that right?
Totally. So you're giving that prospect the excuse to say, yeah, not so much. I'm not impressed already. So I'm going to go back to what I was actually doing. Right.
Got it. And this answers the subliminal question that Bob probably has is, who are you and what do you want? You know, to be completely blunt, you know, this thing, my phone rings, I don't know the number. I'm going to pick it up because maybe I think it's the vet or my kid's school or you know, it's an important call. So as soon as I pick it up, I say, this is Bob, and I'm going, okay, who is this and what do you want, right?
Yeah, and at the same time, there's some transparency that they're going to get a clue that this is a sales call. That's okay. A lot of people will take them if they know there's going to be respect of their time.
Okay, got it. And so Bob is like, okay, fine. You got you have 3 seconds. I'm not even giving you 30 seconds. You got 3 seconds. Now you got to go into the FOMO opener. What are we talking about there?
Yeah, so what we want to do is build up Bob's curiosity, right? And build up that fear of missing out, right? The FOMO, in terms of this is something that is relevant, right? You're going to paint that picture. And some of the language we see over here is, you know, we've revolutionized database management. Our customers see 3x revenues. Our game-changing tech reduces IT costs. Whatever it is in your world that Bob's going to be like, well, damn, I want to know about revolutionizing database management. That's what I do. I need to listen here. It makes sense for me to continue this call, that there's something I might be missing out on. That's what we're talking about here.
Got it. So they might be, excuse me, they might be missing out on something. And again, it takes them to the fact that, you know, they're isolated kind of in their little bubble, and there might be things going on, you know, in the industry that could help them that they're not aware of.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
So they got that, you got that strong opener. Now we had a question, a comment from Dan, and I'm going to get to all these, but I'm just curious. In the opener that we have, are we giving anything back to them? We're asking them for 30 seconds, minus 30 seconds. And is there any reciprocity there? Is that where this FOMO comes in, where I'm going to ask you for 30 seconds and they're like, okay, what do you want? And then you go into, hey, we have revolutionized, you know, database management.
Right. There's something to learn. The same reason why we click on ads on the internet all the time, that, oh, that's actually kind of interesting to me, I'm going to click. They're essentially clicking by saying, yeah, I'll listen to this for 30 seconds. You've created that interest up front. But if you go back to that generic one, even in that case, it's saying, Bob, I believe we can help, right?
Ah,
If that's what we're giving in that case. And now he's just curious. Well, what is it? I kind of need to listen.
okay, great. So that's going smooth. And then at this point, Bob says, okay, well, I'm curious. Essentially, what we're trying to drive him to is some sort of curiosity to kind of release the tension of that first 10 seconds. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Okay, so they're a little bit curious. Now you come in, this is tricky because you suggest that a customer brag at this point where
So yeah.
yeah.
So not necessarily at this point.
Okay.
You work what works best for you, right? If you have the ability to say I work with Amazon and Google, or two names that are really known in your sector, then say those. I'm not saying that you'd want to always say that. I'm saying in terms of to be able to get those 10 seconds to be as effective as possible. If you work with Amazon and Google, you might want to mention that up front. People are going to keep listening.
Got it. And so the question I get about that sometimes is if I'm, calling on like a different industry that they don't really care what Amazon and Google are doing because they're these multi-billion-dollar companies. What you're saying is if you have a relevant customer to that person you're talking to, then you can.
That's exactly right.
Got it. Okay. So that's going to be some mental judo there. You're in your FOMO opener, say they say like they're giving you some positive feedback here. They're saying, wait a minute, tell me more about that. I'm curious. Like you've won the first 10 seconds at that point. Then you're bring in an example of how you can do that.
That's right. Yeah, that's our next webinar, David, about what to do after the first 10 seconds. This is really about how to keep them on the line, because so many calls get lost in that first 10 seconds because the prospect said, this person's a joke. I'm gonna kill this call as quickly as possible, because the rep didn't show that they have confidence and conviction, and they didn't string together the correct words.
Yes, 100%. So homework for everybody is go in, write your opener, write your FOMO statement, and it's not going to be perfect for every call that you make. But once you get that down, now you got to start going back to that whole mindset and practicing over and over again to the point where you can brush off the brush offs and have confidence and not be that kind of sniveling little, desperate person, right? That's asking for,
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And so now I'm going to open it up to some questions that came in. And I never know how to do this. I'm sorry. I'm technologically unsavvy. Here it is. Okay. A couple of questions when it's appropriate. Most contact numbers, Joe, are customer service 800s and things like that. And especially, let's say for folks that have not invested in agent-assisted dialing, other than for going and talking to you after the webinar, what should we do with these 800 numbers and fax? I don't know if there's fax numbers anymore, but these junk numbers, and now that people especially are not in the office.
Yeah, if you don't have agent-assisted dialing, you need to avoid those general numbers like the plague. Only if you have such a tiny addressable market and you can only call into those numbers because that's all you got. Otherwise, you need to shift things and start saying, where do we have the direct lines that we got from Zoom Info or wherever else? Let's call into those to be able to get more conversations. But to spend a lot of time on the main numbers when you're doing manual dialing is insane in 2020.
It really is. So again, and it goes back to the root, and I call it like the oxygen of sales development. And it goes not just for SDRs and BDRs, but for sales as well. The oxygen of it is good, clean, targeted data. And I think it shows. I mean, look at what happened with Zoom Info. They keep growing They did an IPO. I mean, they're so successful because people realize, you know, if you're spending all your time calling 800 numbers and stuff like that, you're toast. Yeah. So
Yeah.
next one is, and this is a huge problem for people because there's so many companies springing up. If your company doesn't have any name recognition and you're trying to sell that unique new technology that customers are unfamiliar with, that's a tough hurdle, Joe.
It is, but it's not so tough. That can't be your excuse why you didn't get through the first 10 seconds. You can use that generic one I showed there. And if you are doing everything else right in terms of having the conviction that you can help, you're going to get a lot of people that will allow you to get to that next step and tell your story of why your new company is a better offering. So you can get there. With the 10 seconds shouldn't be the problem in terms of being a new company without brand recognition.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And so that'd be funny. I think you're getting a sample of what it's like to work for Joe. If you brought in a big list of excuses, he'd just be like, dude, shut up. Don't give me your excuses. I love it.
Listen, David, I hope I don't come off too negative that way, but
no way.
The thing is this, the other oxygen is success, right? If you can nail this stuff and you can do really well in your first 10 seconds and get to longer calls and get to more meetings, you won't dread your next call. You'll want to make your next call. And that's where it's like, you got to be a little bit kind of tough on this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I just meant that in, you know, hey, in sales, like there are, you got to just make it happen. I mean, to some extent, you got crappy data, you have no brand recognition, you don't have a Connect leader, like you're just still gonna have to make it happen. Either that or you gotta go get another job. So we gotta figure this out. This is a good question though that came in from Yash. The customer picks up, you give them your best, you've been practicing, you got confidence, you give them your best 10 seconds, they hang up immediately. What do you do there? Do you call them right back? Do you leave a voicemail? Do you just move on?
It depends. If you believe it was a connection issue, maybe you call them right back. If they are so important as a prospect and you think you have something to say that, generally speaking, no. They're probably a little bit hot and you're better off letting them cool down and getting them another time. They won't remember you 2 days later. So there are exceptions, but I don't think you should normally be calling someone right back unless it seemed like there was a real connection issue.
Yeah, and you know, it's one of those things like if you click off an ad online or you shut down, you know, a pop-up window. I mean, it's nothing personal, you know, you're just trying to get it out of the way so that you can move on to the next thing. And I think with receiving a phone call, you got to think of it the same way. I mean, they're just like, they're probably heads down, they're super busy on something. You called, they realize that it's not exactly what they're working on, and bing, they hang up. So I love that. Give them a day or two, call them back. They're not going to remember you anyways. And Joe, we're up against the hour, but we had one more great comment here. Creative answer for, where'd you get my number? I've heard that a million times. What do you say? Or what do you tell your team?
Well, it depends, but you could just safely say it's the number that we have in our CRM. We've been building our database for years, but potentially, you know, in our world, we could say, potentially we can help you if you're having that problem of getting people on the phone, because we talk to sales and marketing people, right? But that's, again, one of those classic brush-offs that they don't care so much where you've got the number. And it's a tip-off, by the way, that they are thinking this is maybe more of a B2C call if they're saying that. There's probably something wrong if you're hearing that a lot. Where'd you get my number? They don't understand it's a B2B call.
Got it. Yeah, really good advice. And you know, hey, everybody's contact information's out there, man. I mean, if you don't know that, then you've been living under a rock. So we have a job to do. We have to talk to people, and we have something very, very valuable, and we've got that confidence. So yeah, I got your number out of my database here. Well, Joe, this has been amazing. I got a bunch of notes here. I've got a bunch of homework to do. Everyone's got a bunch of homework to do. We want to thank everybody for jumping on. And
yeah, thank you.
If you want to practice, this, if you want to reach out to Joe or myself, we're both on LinkedIn. Shoot us a note. And yes, we are recording this, and it will be posted over on Tenbound website and the YouTube channel as well, if you want to review any of this. And Joe, best way to get in touch with you after the webinar?
LinkedIn, Joe Cronin, Connect Leader. You'll find me. Let's talk.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for jumping on. And thanks again, Joe and the Connect Leader team for all the hard work. Really appreciate all the tips, and we'll see you on the next cold call.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thanks everyone for joining us.